On October 21st, IBJ unveils the 2025 Women of Influence. Join us to celebrate Indy's most inspiring leaders and hear the powerful stories behind their success. Don't miss this moment. Register now at ibj.com/influence2025.
This is the IBJ podcast for the week of October 30th, 2025, brought to you by Taft. I'm Lesley Weidenbener, the editor of IBJ, in this week for Mason King. As the federal government shutdown drags on and thousands of federal workers are going without paychecks, we thought it would be a great time to check in with Peter Dunn about what to do if you're suddenly laid off or facing a loss of income. Peter writes the Pete the Planner column and hosts the Pete the Planner podcast, where he offers advice about money. He's also the founder and CEO of Your Money Line, which provides workplace financial advice for companies across the country. He and I talked about the challenges facing federal workers for whom the future remains murky, and we discuss what those and other laid off or furloughed workers can do and what they shouldn't do to address their situation. Here's our conversation. Pete, welcome back to the podcast.
It's good to be with you, Lesley. I can't say that I don't deeply miss Mason, but I'm very, very excited to be talking to you.
You know, we're talking today in part because there's so much news about the federal workforce and how many federal workers have been two things going on. Some have been temporarily furloughed and expect to come back to work. And then there's a whole nother group of people who we think are being laid off permanently. So sort of two things there. And those both present really interesting opportunities and dilemmas for people and their money.
Yeah, and I think if we're going to use a lens today, I can prescribe a lens to use.
Great.
People can choose to use it if they want or not. That's okay. How about the lens of empathy, right? The idea that if you were to put yourself in this person's shoes, and by the way, not you in their shoes with your financial situation, you in their shoes with their financial situation. Because in financial empathy, that's where it usually falls apart. People are like, well, I've got 7 months savings and this wouldn't impact me. It's like, well, you are actually missing the point. So is that, I mean, I'm setting rules for your show. Are you okay?
No, that's great.
Yeah, the clear as mud nature of furloughed versus jobs eliminated, I think is going to be worked out in courts for a very long time, for what it's worth. But for those people caught up in it, let's just hit you with some numbers, some facts, some ideas of what happens during a government shutdown. So the government does not pay its workers during a shutdown, with the exception of a small group of people. So let's go ahead and shine the light on those folks.
Great.
Oddly enough, I don't know if this had occurred to you, members of Congress get paid.
Interesting. I think there's usually some controversy about that.
The president, and again, I think if we're being intellectually honest here, Lesley, I think it wouldn't impact our current president's thoughts one way or the other.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Yeah, that's fair to say.
Federal judges and some court staff continue to get paid. I don't know. I'll leave that to the listener to decide if that has any influence on it. My personal opinion is that the members of Congress still getting paid definitely impact the urgency of which people move to solve this problem.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think if members of Congress, some members of Congress, not all, if some members of Congress were not getting paid, that would encourage them to make a change faster.
I've had an interesting opportunity to serve people in all walks of life and help them solve financial challenges, including members of Congress, including federal judges too. So their financial lives are no more stable than a single listener of this podcast. And so this idea that they've got a lot of power, sure. This idea that they make a really good income, yeah, okay. The idea that that begets instant stability, oh, absolutely not. In fact, I will tell you of the small cross-section of members I've been able to work with, if they were not getting paid right now, the shutdown would be over.
It's fascinating. And, this is one of the reasons that we asked you to write for IBJ is because of this idea that no matter what your salary is, at whatever level people are at, many of them are struggling financially. And I guess that's what you're saying about people in Congress as well.
Yeah, I am. And the other little leap that I don't want people to take is then putting shame on the members of Congress. That's not what we're doing. It's like there's partners at law firms that if they went 2 pay periods without pay, they'd be toast. Same with surgeons at your favorite hospital or least favorite
CEOs.
Hospital. Yeah, CEOs, jerks like me, right? Yeah. But as we get into this, there's the basics of what gets funded in a person's financial life. And then there's their goals that don't get funded. I am not going to pull money out of my savings account to fund my 401k. I'm not going to pull money out of my savings if I don't have a paycheck for 8 weeks to then pay for college while I'm just trying to pay my mortgage and other obligations. So as we get into this, you'll see it's not as simple as take money from savings and then you just pay it back later. It doesn't work like that.
I've thought a lot about this. I mean, one, I will tell you that I had a layoff in my career. My husband has had 3 layoffs in his career. And so we've actually been through a lot of this. And you are absolutely right. Even if you have money in your savings account, I mean, if you're listening to your financial advisor, you don't actually have a ton just sitting there liquid. You've got money invested, you've got money in different places. It's not as if you can just suddenly turn on a spigot and have cash at the ready to handle all of your daily expenses. And so almost everyone has to think about what they would do in this situation.
I agree. And I think you and I've had this conversation before about one of the silver linings of the pandemic, which is always a gross phrase, is that people talk about mental health in a more important way, in a better, more casual way. But appropriately casual. And I think with that also comes this idea that if you lose your job, for some people, there's an identity aspect to that. And so you may want to protect your mental health by living your financial life as though nothing went awry.
You are absolutely right about that. Like that, it is hard to force yourself to make a change. Some part of your brain wants to pretend nothing happened.
And I get that, right? Like I feel deeply for those people. That's why this silly, like, stop going to Starbucks and spending $5 that type of advice is so ignorant. It's mathematically true, by the way, but it is functionally ignorant because one has to account for the other areas of wellness in their life, including their own mental health. And so I think as we look at who's not getting paid right now, it starts to shed a light on this. Active duty military, although, as I'm sure you're about to point out, President Trump dug into the Davenport cushions there at the White House and found some change to pay the active duty military, we think. So he says, I don't know if it's happening. Any insight there? Do you know?
I don't have any insight there. It's always hard to tell what's really happening.
TSA officers, and air traffic controllers. So let's put those two groups of folks together. Last week, I was told the wonderful Weir-Cook Indianapolis International Airport experienced the most travelers they had ever had, I believe, on a particular day last week or something like that. And I was there. I was traveling to Dallas and back, and Indy's got its stuff together, so it didn't really impact us. But I'll say definitely impacted by other air traffic control towers. Lesley, you have a very stressful job. I've got to see you work. Very stressful job. You got a lot of balls in the air. Imagine doing your job, knowing you're not going to get paid for 2, 3, 4 or more pay periods. How does that impact you?
That is a terrible, demoralizing situation. And of course, stressful. We are all, like, the air traffic controllers, already considered one of the most stressful jobs in America. And it is no surprise that when they are not getting a paycheck, some of them start calling in sick. No surprise.
And it goes further. Customs and Border Protection agents. I'm not sure about ICE of where they fall within this because of their new level of funding. FBI and other federal law enforcement do not get paid. And this one was a nuanced one, Lesley. VA hospital workers that
Ooh.
continue to serve our veterans, but they aren't getting paid to do so. Now, just a total anecdotal side note, I know a few people that work at VA facilities, and in some cases, they're people that left lucrative medical careers to go serve. And I just an interesting, compelling element as part of that conversation. So federal contractors definitely don't get paid.
Yep.
They don't get paid at all. And then grant-funded researchers and nonprofits who depend on these sorts of things, they're out of luck too. So,
And these are people you're describing here who are working and not getting paid.
the first group of people I just
Okay.
described, working, not getting paid.
And then there's a whole group that are not working and not getting paid.
Yeah. I mean, federal contractors being a large
Sure.
group, and they usually don't work, but sometimes it varies. And the interesting thing is, usually federal contractors don't get backed pay after a shutdown, right?
Most people do. So when we were talking about the TSA folks, air traffic controllers, the military, in past shutdowns, they have always been paid later. And in fact, most federal employees who don't go to work during a shutdown actually do get paid. But President Trump has thrown some doubt into whether that will be the case this time, I think.
Let's go back to the average pay, at least in 2023, for federal worker salary was about $101,000. Let's be inaccurate and call it 100 just so we can
Sure.
All right. So that's $8,333 a month. And let's just step back for a moment. And here's what's weird about personal finance, Lesley, is that let's say 3 months expenses set aside in that situation it's $25,000. Okay, that's quite literally what it is. An emergency fund, a proper one for that person, $25,000. What's also interesting is that people tend to stop their savings at round numbers. They'll say, well, 10,000 feels like a lot of money, so I don't want to lock up anything more than that. So I would say what I know is a vast majority of those people don't have a full emergency fund, and many of them have effectively 1 month's worth of expenses saved. And that's where it gets hairy. And then that's where it turns to, where do they bank?
Yeah.
If they bank in the right place, they're going to be okay. If they bank in the wrong place, then they are going to learn a pretty tough lesson.
And do you say that? Well, tell me why you say that. What does that mean?
So there are certain financial institutions that serve people in the government, specifically in the military and the armed forces, where it just kicks in this paycheck extension thing.
Got it.
Direct deposit, for instance, the Navy Federal Credit Union. I don't know, my emphasis was weird on that one. USAA, Pentagon Federal Credit Union, things like these places, they tend to have programs built into place. But Lesley, they were designed for short-term pay gaps.
Yeah, a few days, a week.
Yeah, they're usually 0% interest on these, sometimes up to 2%. Just talking to various people, reading various things like you do as well, there's a feeling this thing's going to go.
Yeah, we just posted a story today that said it could be the longest in history.
That's not fun.
No.
So, part of the point of our discussion today, as you and I planned this, was let's take a beat and let's say a person listening to this loses their income for 3 months. Okay. And there's
a long time.
It's a long time. And then let's say that there's this promise or allusion to the fact that there will be back pay. How much relief should that give you? So let's triage. Let's go into the emergency room of personal finance and see what we come up with here. All right. So this is not let's go furlough. So
furlough, you are temporarily gone. You're temporarily out of your job, and in theory, will get paid at some point.
That's the way it's always worked.
Right.
We'll go with that. Okay. So, let's think of the typical household in America. Do you want to go? Hey, this will be his choose your own adventure. Do you read those books when you're a kid?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Well, this is the adult version. I don't mean adult version like adult bookstores. That's completely different. I mean, adult version is you
We
and
are
I.
not going. We are the IBJ. We are not going there.
Right. Well, no, look, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. I'm just clarifying. I don't know who's listening. Number one, double income or single income. What do you want for this
Let's
house?
do double.
Okay. That's good. I will say if a person is earning $100,000 as a federal worker, it's more likely than not that their partner is going to be earning less. Okay.
Maybe a teacher, for example.
So let's go 60K.
Okay.
Okay. So household income of $160,000. The take home, oh boy, math on a podcast. It's always
I know.
fun.
I'm hoping you're doing the math because
I
it is
got the
not
math.
my jam.
But it's fun. Let's go this route. Okay, so their take home pay a month, I factored in just 30% set to the side, which is a little light, but 30% set aside is $9,333 a month. Okay, $9,333 a month. But since they're in the midst of this scenario with one person's laid off, instead of 9,333, it's $3,500. Okay. The question then becomes, what is the likely mortgage payment for someone making $9,333 a month? And the answer to that, Lesley, is $2,300 to $2,400.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Okay?
I'm scared for these people already.
Okay. Now, this is where the nuance, I think you and I actually discussed this before we started going today. We're like, this isn't political in any way. And so
Absolutely not.
I'm literally trying not to be. There's elements of it, but let's talk inflation, which somehow has become political, even though it's an economics thing. Inflation has taken us to the point that for anyone to spend less than $1,000 a month on food that makes $160,000 a year is tough. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Especially, I mean, this double income family very likely has kids. So absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So between the mortgage and food, we're out of money.
Yep.
Got no utilities, car payments,
phone bill,
anything. Okay. So what does a person do in this scenario? You can have the comfort of saying you're eventually going to get repaid, right? That is a calming force, but I just view it as a data point of how many glass veins can you break, or panes, I guess. You break
glass panes. Yeah.
Veins. Anyway, how many glass panes can you break and know that there's recourse, positive recourse on the other end? So, all right, this person, they're not going to have 9,333. Their most basic needs are easily $5,000. The question is, do they start bleeding $1,500 out of their savings a month to take their income from $3,500 to $5,000? And then do they just go Spartan, spending freeze, everything? Let's explore that for a second. Pulling $1,500 a month out of your savings doesn't sound terrible, does it?
It doesn't sound terrible, especially if you believe that you're going to get repaid.
I agree.
It doesn't sound terrible if you're going to get repaid.
Okay, well, so let me flip this around on you. If you just said the magic words, if you believe you're going to get repaid, guess what? You're more likely to spend more than $1,500 a month because you believe you're going to get repaid.
True.
Right? And so what you're going to say is, well, let's just go ahead and make ourselves whole. Okay. So in this scenario, we are pulling out $5,800, but we'll round up to $6,000 a month. And you and I've just said that we're going for a 3-month period. You're pulling out $18,000 heading into the holidays.
Yeah.
In which the most expensive 6 weeks of any person's year are Wednesday before Thanksgiving through the end of the year.
Yep.
So That's stressful.
It is really, really stressful. And just when you took that from $1,500 a month that we might take out to pay to do the bare minimum up to, was it 6,000
Yeah,
taking out? Yeah,
to make yourself whole.
6,000.
Yep.
Like that made, I mean, my heart beat faster just thinking about the difference in what you're taking out there. But I do think you're right. I think emotionally, mentally, I think a lot of people would make that choice rather than make really tough decisions about their spending. Let's take a break to hear from our sponsor. This is the IBJ podcast.
Taft, today's modern law firm. At Taft, we cultivate a highly respectful, transparent workplace that fosters creativity, teamwork, inclusion, and diversity. We couple our culture with a client-first approach, rewarding lawyers who understand their clients' goals and work to deliver success. Taft, the modern law firm. To learn more, visit taftlaw.com.
Welcome back to the IBJ podcast. I'm Lesley Weidenbener, the editor of IBJ, talking with Peter Dunn, who writes a column and hosts a podcast about money. So let's assume, though, that they're listening to us and they think maybe I should make some tough decisions. How do you start doing that?
I think you do one that is sort of conceptually representative of sacrifice, and that's food. I think when people think about behavior change with money, they go to their most frequent uses of money. And given that each one of us eats 93 meals a month, you have to go to the fact that that is the most frequent opportunity to change behavior. So, Lesley, I would look at what the average family dinner at home costs. Let's say I went to some grocery store the other day and got like the quick meal of the weekend. And it was like something. It was 25 bucks for my family of four. It's called 25 bucks. What you do is you set that as an anchor point and you say, okay, if we're going to try to survive 93 dinners, right? 93 dinners over a 3-month period. There's 93 meals in a month, breakfast, lunch, dinner, but 93 dinners.
Dinners, right?
Right. So if the anchor point's 25, do we need a new anchor point?
Yeah.
Do we literally cut that in half by doing the old rice and beans thing? Dave Ramsey is whistling like an angel right now. He's not dead though. I'm just telling you, he's excited somehow, some way. He's not listening. Or what you find is that anchor point is an interesting anchor point, but your average is actually like 37 bucks.
Wow.
And if you dine out as a family of four.
Well, that's what I was going to say, the dining out, then that's $100.
It is $100. So let's say, I believe that the average family of four spends more than $1,000 a month on food. I think they're closer to $1,500. So let's say for some way, shape, or form, you're able to cut that in half at $750. So now we're taking $5,250 out, and you're taking, again, we're trying to be intellectually honest about this. You're taking the mental anguish, and I won't call it shame, but there's some feeling there, I can't identify it, that makes you feel worse about the situation.
Yeah.
You know? So what's that trade-off? $750 a month to feel, impoverished is way too much, but feel it's just a lot of sacrifice for someone in that situation.
Absolutely. Yes. But you got to kind of start there, right? You have to start somewhere.
You have to start there. And then you get into where most people go immediately, which is we're going to stop funding our goals, right? We're going to stop saving for college. We're going to stop saving towards our down payment on our house.
That's for a family of four, especially. They're probably putting money into their 401k. They're putting money into a savings account. They're putting money into a college fund. So there is a big chunk of money going to those things.
Yeah. And where this gets scary, I think, is and this is obvious, but if a person doesn't have an emergency fund in this scenario, Lesley, then they say, okay, what's the largest source of money we could access to solve this problem, no matter how long the problem is? And the answer is usually borrowing from their retirement account.
Yes.
and without getting into the trajectory of the stock market today, because who knows? I mean, who knows what
Anything could happen.
anything can happen. That's bad. That's real. That's short of a payday loan, which I don't think you can get a payday loan when you're
You don't have a payday?
yeah, you don't have a payday. This is where it goes off the rails for government workers specifically in this the scenario we're talking about, is that if you not only don't contribute to your 401k and retirement plan, but then you subtract from it and you use your future to pay for your present, I mean, it could ruin retirement by a number of years.
I think that's going to be counterintuitive to people. I know where you're going, but if you're talking about this, let me back up and say part of the way I think about these things and my own experience with dealing with layoffs is that even when you come up with a lot of these ideas, they're not easy to implement immediately. It's very difficult to ramp down your spending immediately. You've got you can't, even if you cancel things, like you might be in it for a month, or you might be in it for 3 months or the rest of a year or something. And so ramping down spending is tough. So I can see why so many people choose to take a loan from their 401k. So I want you to spend a little bit more time explaining why that is such a negative choice.
A couple of reasons. And it's a great question. And sometimes I blow past those things because I'm versed in it, right? So there's this idea that the people who've lost the most in our economy in the last 10 to 15 years, and by lost, I don't mean like lost money. It's just they've not
kept up, made the gaps getting bigger.
Yeah, it's the people who aren't participating in the markets, right? And so like I have the same grocery prices as someone who isn't in the market, but my year over a 12-month period is markedly better, even if we have the same incomes, because the market has been very good to me. And so that's one element. The other element of this is that it takes a long time to repay a 401k loan or a retirement plan loan, because it's not like your cash flow changes during the repayment period, because then you'd have to repay it with any speed, you'd have to change your lifestyle significantly. So there's this bite on the back end. And God forbid you leave the job that the 401k is at while the loan still exists.
Because they're due immediately, right? When you leave.
Yeah. And then it's a massive taxable event.
Yeah.
And so, but that is one of the most common mistakes people make here. And so then, I don't know. I
just have to say, I've never borrowed from my 401k, but I have had that in my head. It's been in my head that when bad things happen, or if bad things were going to happen, that is available to me. So maybe I should just knock that out of my head. It's not available to me.
Well, here's how I view it. Again, if you want to go to the broken glass panes, as everyone calls them, panes, that's the last one.
That's the last one.
That's the last one. And by the way, sometimes it's what you got to do. And that's the tough thing. It's like sometimes it literally is what you got to do, and you just shouldn't do it before you got to do it.
Got it.
Here's where my brain goes, and I want to check whatever sort of judgment it may feel like I have at the beginning of the podcast here, but I immediately go to, let's get some income. Let's drive DoorDash. Let's drive Uber. I don't know why I'm in my car. Let's get another something.
Get a part-time job. We are coming up on the holidays, right? I mean, we are at IBJ right now. We're getting press releases from lots of companies saying that they're hiring for the holidays.
Yes. Go work.
Is there some pride that can get in the way of doing that, do you think?
Some people see a problem that way and other people don't. And it's really easy to say that the people who don't view it as, well, I'll just go get another job, that they are somehow solving the problem in a less than ideal way. But it's just different strokes for different folks.
And the truth is, it is solving a problem. That is actually a great way to frame this entire conversation for people. as a husband and wife or as a mother and kids or whoever sit down to have the conversation about what do we do now that we're furloughed or laid off or whatever it is, a great way to frame it is to say, here's our problem. Let's try to solve it and then look for the opportunities along the way.
I think every middle school math teacher in America is like, this is why story problems matter, Gary.
That's right.
You know?
Yes.
You know? And I here again, this gets into the weird part of the problem solving that I do as a career, but I think it's a privilege to solve a problem. Like give me the problem. I want to be involved with what we're doing. And I think for some people, when you don't view your own financial life as a story problem, sometimes you don't get enough momentum or gumption to empower yourself to solve the problem.
Yeah, it's really an interesting way to look at it.
Here's what a person could understandably say is, I don't know what's going to end. I don't want to go through the trouble of finding a job. And so, yeah, I get that. It's a lot of work. And again, I'm not telling everyone to go out and get a job. That's not the takeaway. If whoever writes the headline for this podcast writes, Pete the Planner says, get a job, you lazy federal workers, I'm going to be very upset.
I am writing the headline, and I'm not going to write that unless you do something that really is frustrating to me. But
yeah, don't sell me down the river, please.
You know, another interesting thing about this, though, too, is if you go through the motions of getting your resume ready, getting it out there, looking for another job, you actually never know what you might hit upon. You never know how you might be prepared for the next thing that comes along.
I think you hit on something that is wildly important. When adversity comes, the sooner you can find opportunity in it, the better. And financially and in personal finance, it's not that different. It just always feels so personal. It guts you, right? You can feel your stomach drop in these situations. And I think there's two other elements of this that are always on my mind in these situations. And I'm going to butcher an old Maya Angelou quote. Like you do the best you can with the information you have. And then you learn something else and then you do better, right?
So let's get back to the practical.
Yes.
Someone's laid off. You do not want them to take a loan from their 401k. What about and of course, if you're laid off from your job, you're not contributing to your 401k. But what about all the other contributions that you make? Is it okay to stop contributing to your kids' college fund for a little while? Is it okay to suspend the money that maybe you were putting into an investment fund for a while?
Yes. You know, my dream for this episode, Lesley, is that someone who's currently going through a furlough finds it and finds value in it and feels some level of comfort in me saying, yeah, you can stop that right now.
That can make a big difference.
I think so, because we just want to do things right. And you don't want to look back with regret that, oh, you did the wrong thing. So all you have to do is you just have to remember when it's over, turn the faucet back on.
Don't get in the habit of don't get the fact that you're not making those payments become a habit.
It is highly unlikely. This is a hot take. It is highly unlikely that anyone affected by this furlough will ever be made financially whole based on how the markets work.
That makes sense.
And so everyone will be slightly damaged. The only way is if somehow, some way, the market tanks hard. I'm not predicting this, and I'm not jinxing us either. And then the spigot of pay gets turned back on at some market bottom, and then you're just buying your way up. Possible, but that's the only way anyone's going to be made whole here. So I think the idea of just like take the pressure off yourself. I don't want to say gamify it because that's a little gross, but like let's see what we can really do. And Lesley, apparently it's the silver lining day for me. Let's say you're in your 50s or early 60s and you're going through this right now. What an amazing opportunity to practice retirement income.
Interesting.
Especially if you're 5 years out from retirement and you're spooked because what does this mean for you? Okay, go to a financial planner, project what your retirement income is going to be, live on that right now, and prove it to yourself that you can do it for 3 months. And it quite literally would save your financial life.
That's so interesting. I never would have thought of that.
I think anytime that there's a life event, layoff, termination, pregnancy for that matter, where maybe one of the parents is going to come out of the workforce for a little bit. The 9-month period of pregnancy becomes an opportunity to game your cash flow and practice a different cash flow during that period of time. So that's always like a superpower move to do in a weird situation.
So one of the things that I've thought a lot about is even in my own finances while I'm working is I know how many things I've let build up in my budget that are recurring payments that are, I mean, this is not going to be a surprise, but I have way too many news subscriptions. Way
Really?
too many.
So do
I
I.
have too many news subscriptions. I have too many, YouTube TV, Apple TV type subscriptions. Each of these might be $10 a month or $15 a month, but they really add up. It feels like that would be a good thing to do and something that even if you did get paid back someday, it's not a bad idea to go through your checking account and look at all these expenses and root out some of this stuff.
I agree. I want to stop slightly short for both of us to the this can be your period of rediscovery. Like, I don't want to do
You're right. That's condescending.
neither of us want to do that. And we're not saying
That's
that.
right.
But I will say, like resetting your spending. Here's one for you. I had a guy. I have all these sorts of stories I can never give names to. Former professional football player who said he would, the way he would reset his spending is that he would just cancel the credit card that all the subscriptions were on. They couldn't get funded, and he would open a new credit card, and that was his like biannual cleanse. And I thought, is that genius or is that not genius? And I
I
don't
think
know
it's
where I land.
great.
It's interesting. We were talking about empathy through this whole thing and how, yeah, talking about other people's money. It's one thing to talk about your own money or your money or my money, but we're talking about other people's money, which is like so deeply personal. When I used to manage money for professional athletes back in the day, people love to talk about their money.
Yes, that's so true.
Oh, they
Yes.
love it. They love it. I can give you 10 reasons why it's a lot harder than most people think, and no one will care about any of those reasons. But it's just, for what it's worth, from your friend Pete, you always got to be careful talking about other people's money. And when I write my columns, by the way, or do my podcast for IBJ, I always try to keep that in the front of like, yeah, that's a hard thing to do. Tell someone else how to spend their money.
What else? What else should someone do when they're faced with this situation? And we're not just federal workers, but we're seeing some more layoffs, and especially tech companies, some other places. What's the next thing somebody should do?
I can tell you the best thing to do, and it's also the most painful thing you can possibly do. Find a person, a service, a friend, or someone who is willing to look at your financial decisions that you make on an ongoing basis and ask them to be kind, but ask them to also be very objective and say good, bad, 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 good, okay, bad, good. And then use it as an opportunity in the time that you might have. There I am using the time for discovery to say, whatever one the person says this is bad to, whatever one that hurt the worst to hear, start there. I don't know. When I get feedback and the ones that hurt the worst are always the ones that I know like 10 minutes later, I'm like, that's probably true.
Yeah, it's like when you see a nutritionist and they tell you to cut out the one thing that you like to eat the most. And it's like, that is the thing I most need to cut out. I wouldn't be here if I didn't
Yeah.
most need to cut that out. So I want to go back to something you said early about that some people have a good are in a good situation with their bank or some financial institution because those banks or credit, maybe loan companies deal with people who work for the federal government on a regular basis. What if that's not your situation? Should you call your credit card company? Should you call your mortgage company and say, here's my situation? Is there a use in that?
Yes and no. And there's some things that could happen. I mean, you could call up your credit card company and again, do you hear are you asking for leniency? Are you asking? I always think communication's a good thing, especially with your financial institutions, and say, look, I don't have an income right now. Do you happen to have anything going on for government workers or in general, even if you're not a government worker, do you have anything for people that are in my situation? They might say, well, yeah, we actually freeze your interest rate or this or that and blah, blah. Maybe. On the other side of that, what that can clue them into is you may get to a point of you might find your interest rate going up, or you might find your credit line shrinking. If I were to call the banker of my company, who is a credit facility for us, and I were to give them a suboptimal report about the finances of this here institution, it's possible they cut my credit line, right? That's how it works. I think going to a bank and letting them know what's going on, especially if you're a government worker, I think you're going to see potentially the Chases of the world, the Banks of America of the world potentially have something for folks there. But I also think if all our banking friends are going to enjoy this one, if you were in a situation in which you're in a union and you were represented with collective bargaining, or a situation with the government workers, that's why there's a reason to bank at a credit union that is part of an affinity group for that profession. It literally makes all of the sense in the world.
All right, Pete, let's do a little bit of a recap because we kind of, as we are wont to do, we wandered a little bit. So let's recap. One of the first things that you need to do is really take a look at what you're spending, what your gap is. Is that a fair thing to say right off the bat?
Absolutely. Most people don't know what their monthly expenses are. Most people couldn't even tell you what their take-home pay is. So those are the two pillars of all of this. Start there, and then the decisions start getting made. What are we going to cut? Am I going to try to supplement our income with some gig work? I think another really important thing that we've not talked about is anytime you're in a financial emergency, grab a calendar and try to identify how long the crisis is going to last, because that data point really helps solve the problem in a reverse way. In this scenario, my recommendation is to say January. I mean,
Yeah, it's a long time, but you're probably right. That would probably be really helpful. And it would be helpful because we have the holidays coming up. These are tough decisions that probably need to be made at a time when people are spending a lot of money.
yeah, and you and I are first to the scene as journalists. You're a journalist. I'm just here with a microphone. But first to the scene with like holiday spending and how that's going to get impacted by not only those that are laid off, but I also want you to think for a second, we're a consumer-based economy.
Yes.
If this large population isn't spending money into the holidays, look out Q4 results. It's going to be an ugly Q1.
You are first to the scene. I had not thought about that or read about that. That is very interesting to think about. Okay, so we want people to figure out what their baseline is, their baseline spending, figure out what their new income is going to be, try to get a timeline together, and then really start digging into those expenses. Maybe take some money from their emergency fund, but try not to fill the entire gap.
Yeah, just you gotta shrink the gap one way or the other. Beyond that, use as a chance to hit financial reset. I mean, I think for a month or so, you can get away with like gap management, but the longer you're in it, the more your mind sort of accepts the new use of your 168 hours a week of time. Maybe you say, I'm up for a little bit of a project. You're done painting all your rooms. And so you're like, what if we started our financial life over? What would that really look like?
And part of that, as we said earlier, could also be looking, getting ready to maybe look for another position. This might be, and especially there is all of this talk about reducing the size of government. It may not be the worst time to say, let me see what else is out there.
100% agree with that. And I'm sure some people will do that. I know when pressures became too intense upon educators, K through 12 schools during, a lot of the school board meeting stuff and all of that was going on, the pandemic. That's when a lot of people regripped and said, I want to look at something slightly different.
Yeah, it'd be great we could sort of challenge some businesses here to think about this opportunity here with these workers who are furloughed, maybe laid off. Look for a way to market your jobs to them. Seems like there could be a good match there.
I do. And just if you want to think what brings us together in this moment, maybe we end here. What brings us all together? Almost 99.9% of people, and that is that Congress should not get paid during the shutdown. There we ended perfectly. Everyone agrees on.
I'm pretty sure there will be a lot of people agree with that. So Pete, thank you so much for being with us. It is always informative and fun to have you on the podcast.
Thanks, Lesley.
Thanks again to Peter Dunn. You can read his financial advice column in IBJ every other week and listen weekly to his podcast, which is part of the IBJ Media Podcast Network. You can also go to IBJ.com to read the latest about the Elanco Animal Health Campus in Greenfield. Once Elanco fully moves into its headquarters campus in downtown Indianapolis, officials want to turn the Greenfield site into an anchor for a planned agricultural corridor. Also, reporter Marek Mazurek has a story about the use of non-disclosure agreements in data center negotiations, and reporter Dan Lee writes about Witham Hospital in Boone County, which will soon be facing competition from a new hospital that Fort Wayne-based Parkview Health announced it will be building in Lebanon. You can find these and other stories at IBJ.com. Thanks for listening to the IBJ podcast. Mason King will be back next week.
Curious about what's shaping law in Indiana? From court reforms and NIL rights to mental health courts and energy commissions, the Indiana Lawyer Podcast breaks down the biggest legal issues of our time. I'm your host, reporter Maura Johnson. Join me every other week for your insider guide to what matters in law and why it impacts you. Subscribe now in your favorite podcast app or at ibjpodcasts.com.
On the go? So are we. Get the IBJ Media app, your all-in-one news source for Indiana business news. Get breaking news alerts, read every story from IBJ, Inside Indiana Business, and the Indiana Lawyer, and listen to your favorite podcasts all in one place. Big news, small screen. Search IBJ Media and download the app today.